Hi everyone, and welcome to Cat Scratch Kitchen. Chicken and dumplings is an iconic Southern dish that's been enjoyed for generations. It's been synonymous with comfort food my whole life. It's a hearty meal that's perfect for cold winter nights or any time you're craving some good old-fashioned comfort. This dish is typically made with chicken, broth, and dumplings. That's it. And the great debate is whether the dumplings should be fluffy or flat. Now today I'm going to make the dumplings that I grew up with, flat dumplings, which we also knew as slicks. The term slicks refers to the way the dough is rolled out, cut into thin strips, and then added to the broth and cooked until tender. The result is a delicious and satisfying meal that's sure to warm your heart and soul. Want to give it a try? Then grab your apron and let's get started. All right, to begin with, you're going to need a large pot or Dutch oven, and you want to put your broth in there. You can use broth or stock, either one. And you want to start warming it up, and while it's warming up, we'll put our dumplings together, and then we'll start dropping them in here once the dumplings are made. The amount that's in the recipe is a normal serving. I generally either 1.5 or 2 times multiply the recipe. You can multiply or reduce the recipe amounts easily. It makes no difference in the final outcome. Okay, mixing up the dumplings is really easy. Mixing up the dumplings is really easy. Takes very little time. Just need some all-purpose flour. You need some baking powder, a pinch of salt, some butter. Now I soften my butter, you don't have to, but I think it's easier to mix up that way. And now we just mix this together and make sure the butter gets cut into the flour. You can use a fork or a pastry cutter. If the butter is softened, I find it just as easy to use a spoon. You can even get your hands in there if you want to. Once you've got the butter cut in well, then we're going to add some milk. Now, very frequently, I make it just using water instead of milk, and it still turns out fine. It's not quite as rich as far as dumplings are concerned, but it still tastes delicious. Start with just a little bit less than what I think I need. Stir it together until it forms a soft dough. The dough can be a little bit sticky like this because as you roll it out and get it ready, it's going to have lots of additional flour added to it. Once your dough is mixed up, you need some place to roll it out, a rolling pin, and something to put your cut dumplings on. I use a big baking tray, works fine. First thing I want to do, make sure you have your flour on hand because you're going to be using it to dust a lot of surfaces. You want a really well dusted surface to roll out on. And you want to make sure you dust your rolling pin well. And I'm going to take about half of this dough at a time. And we're just going to fold it over a couple of times so that it's got plenty of flour. It doesn't really need to be kneaded at all. And you want to roll it out pretty thin, probably about 1/8 of an inch. The thinner the dumplings, to me, the better they taste, because they're going to puff up just a little bit in the broth, but we don't want big old pillows of dough in there. You got to be sure to keep plenty of flour on your work surface. It doesn't have to be pretty. It's not a pie crust. Once it's all rolled out, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more flour on it. And my pan that I'm going to put dumplings on, I'm going to put flour in that as well. And then I like to use like a pizza cutter to cut it with. And make sure it's floured too. And then you just want to start making thin strips. And then you're going to start going perpendicular to that. And you want about 2-inch strips, just a little bigger than squares. And don't worry about it too much. Some of them are going to be bigger, some of them are going to be smaller, some of them are going to be really funny shaped. Doesn't matter. Then I'm just going to put the dumplings in layers in this pan that I've got here. And this is the most tedious part of the whole thing, which is not bad. And once you get it all on the pan in a single layer, then you're going to flour it on top of this layer and add another layer going the opposite direction. And it seems like a lot of flour, but when you put your dumplings in your broth and start to boil them to cook them, that flour will thicken your broth a little bit and make it really hearty and yummy. And if they stick together, I mean, that's not a big deal anyway, because you can just pull them apart, tear them apart as you put them into the broth, because the dumplings, once they start cooking, you really have no idea what shape they are anyway. So it's so forgiving. It's easy, easy, easy to do. I guess the one thing you have to make sure of when you start this is that you have plenty of flour on hand. Okay, once it starts boiling vigorously, start dropping in your dumplings right in the boiling part. I usually start at the edge. And every few dumplings, I take my spoon and just stir it so that they're not sticking to the bottom. Once you got all your dumplings in, then you want to start putting your chicken in. And this is just cooked chicken that I've just torn apart by hand. I like it torn apart rather than diced, but you can do it whichever way you like. Stir it through, and then let your dumplings cook for just a few minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the most, just so that you get rid of that raw flavor from the flour and that they cook through. And once you've let it cook for a few minutes, you can start dipping it up. You can see that the broth got a little bit thicker from the flour. I also added a good bit of black pepper. If you want the broth even creamier, you can add a can of cream of chicken soup or a batch made up of our anything cream of soup. And I'll put a link for that down in the bottom in case you need it. And we're all set for dinner. I hope you liked this video and give it a try. It's so easy and the perfect dish for a cozy meal on a cold winter's evening. Please take a moment to subscribe to my channel for more delicious recipes, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you never miss a video. Now, as always, the recipe is just below the like button, as well as a link so that you can print it out. Be sure to come back next week for another delicious recipe, and until then, have fun in the kitchen.